Hello, friends. You've stumbled across a short clip from the Daily Switch 2 podcast, which, believe it or not, is a podcast that is about the Switch 2 with new episodes released daily. What will they think of next? It's super cool to me that all the games in the series are available both physically and digitally for one console, despite it being such a long-running series. And honestly, with the quality of life improvements, it's best to play the first three games on modern consoles anyway, rather than the GBC, DSi, and 3DS originals, in my opinion. But we'll get on to that. However, some of you don't even know anything about the character, the series, why it's so cool, why it's so well regarded, why Shantae was one of the top requested characters for Smash and Amiibo, and even got her own Mii character costume as Nintendo recognized the fan demand to some extent. Let's rewind backwards to find the way forward. See what I did there? For that is the developer here, Way Forward. A name that many of you will know is associated with quality titles. Based in Valencia, California, and founded by Voldy Way, hence Way Forward, they started out in the early 90s making educational titles and licensed kid games for consoles and PC. 8-bit consoles, 16-bit consoles, handhelds, and Windows 9X PCs. They did this as a developer for hire, hoping to finance their own original titles, and it was clear to anyone that actually played any of these games that they were a massive cut above your average edutainment slop. The first big game from them that I remember having success was Mickey's Ultimate Challenge for the SNES, Game Boy, Mega Drive/Genesis, Game Gear, and even the Master System in Brazil, which I imported and own a copy of, as I love the Master System Mickey titles. Land of Illusion is one of my favourite games ever. It's a simple kids game, Mickey's Ultimate Challenge, with multiple puzzles. Adults won't find it difficult, but there's tons of variety and excellent presentation. At the time, they made titles for licenses, including Casper the Friendly Ghost, Berenstain Bears, both properties I loved as a kid, Bear in the Big Blue House, a Muppet series that my kids watched when they were little, so I'm extremely fond of, and The Land Before Time, which is someone who watched the original in the cinema and then went on to be mentored by the legend that is Don Bluth for 2 years, is a property that I will never not be completely in love with. I'm a big dinosaur fan, and Don Bluth is just a legend in my eyes. To this day, they continue to make high-quality licensed titles. In fact, in the last decade or so, they've worked on titles for Adventure Time, Marvel, Scooby-Doo, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, Goosebumps, Bakugan, Troll Hunters, and Miraculous, Porte Bonheur, Lady Magique, Lady Chance, Miraculous, Lady du Cœur, Être héroïque en cas d'urgence. It makes me smile to have a French property in that list. And actually prophetic, as the English voice actor for Miraculous Ladybug, as it's called in America, I believe, is also the voice of Shantae. And we'll get into that later. Nowadays, they are also known for making quality new games in popular retro series. Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, the River City Girls games, Advance Wars, Contra, Yars Rising, and many others. All excellent titles. But it was 3 games in 2000 and 2001 that somewhat changed their fortunes. Probably the first proper games, in inverted commas, rather than just solely educational or little kids only titles, and made many people sit up and take notice at the time. 2 games based on the animated version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Sabrina Zapped and Sabrina Spooked, and a 3rd game also based on a young girl witch, but this time Wendy, Every Which Way, based on the character from Casper, of course. These 3 games were very similar, all on the Game Boy Color, all platform titles with cute magical girl protagonists, all incredibly ambitious for the system, fantastic sprite work, and with a Metroidvania explorative vibe, far beyond what would be expected of a licensed platformer on the Game Boy Color, especially at the time, really playable, and also really pushing the limits of the hardware, making the best use of the extra processing power that the Game Boy Color had over the original DMG Game Boy or Game Boy Pocket. If you wanted to show off what the system could actually do with the right developer, despite what you might initially assume given the licenses, these were actually really good places to start. They got a reputation of being more than worth playing, even if you had zero interest in the properties. You might see where this is going. Game Boy Color, Metroidvania, high-quality limit-pushing games with beautiful sprite art and a cute, cartoony female lead character who can perform magic. Way Forward had always intended to use the money, industry connections, and experience from their licensed games to make their own original properties, and that they did. Perhaps the logical step to follow the success of Sabrina and Wendy, the next year they finally got to branch out with their own unique magical girl character, Shantae. Now, Shantae is a series created by Matt Bozon, creative director of Way Forward, after asking his wife Erin Bozon to create an original character for a game that she would want to play as. In fact, Erin had come up with a unique character earlier in 1994 when she had worked as a camp counselor and met a girl called Shantae who belly danced. Erin came up with a belly dancing genie, or in fact half genie, being the daughter of a human father and genie mother, partially inspired by the TV show I Dream of Jeannie, an American sitcom where a human man dates a female genie and eventually they have a child. Itself very similar to another show called Bewitched, another American sitcom where a human man dates a female witch, and again later on they end up having a half human, half witch child. In both shows, the magical female adult characters are sexy archetypes with supernatural beauty and power over men, but also are very strong, independent and empowered characters with a lot of personality and humour. Around 1994, while making those educational and licensed kids titles for the 8 and 16-bit consoles, Matt was already wanting Way Forward to make original games too, and asked Erin what she would make. And she told him about the character that she had envisioned after working as that camp counselor. Matt helped to draw and then evolve the character and design over time. He's a talented artist. He studied at Cal Arts, California School of the Arts, Cal Arts, basically the home of almost all of the animators from Disney's Renaissance period, which of course included Aladdin, which was clearly inspiring to the Shantae series, and elements of the games clearly also draw from the Aladdin Genesis game from Virgin Games, which Disney did the graphics for, led by Dave Perry. Not that one from Games Master. Dave's got his do-rag, Dave's got his do-rag, Dave's got his do-rag. No, not him. Dave Perry, the guy who went on to form Shiny Entertainment, the Earthworm Jim company, and MDK and all of that. While I don't think I've seen it explicitly mentioned as an inspiration, and knowing what I do in my own career, having worked with many people who came from Cal Arts at that time, I am 100% sure that Richard Williams' magnum opus, the tragically never finished but always in development, and at some point probably hiring every great animator from the 90s, The Thief in the Cobbler, presumably played an enormous visual inspirational role too. I mean, you can see it when you look at the games. Rest in peace, Richard Williams, by the way, another legendary animator that I had the absolute privilege of briefly studying under. And like Don Bluth, both incredible talents and also incredibly lovely guys. Just the two greatest artists I've ever had the privilege of studying under. But also, like everyone at Cal Arts at that time, Bozon had been introduced to Japanese animation too, especially the work of Hayao Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli stuff, and Shantae's visual style is a very clear mix between Western Disney and Eastern anime aesthetics. He said that Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, and Ranma One Half were big visual and thematic inspirations, and that is clear to see too. What Erin and Matt created together is for sure a melange of familiar pop culture elements, recreating a sort of idealized, somewhat steampunk vision of the Western adaptations of the Middle Eastern folk stories from 1001 Nights or Arabian Nights, as it's sometimes called. But, sorry, I'm singing a lot today, aren't I? But I'd argue that very little about Shantae feels a derivative. It walks a fine line of including enough familiar elements to feel comfortable and welcoming, whilst mixing them together in a way that's interesting, unique, satisfying, and actually pretty original. As a quick aside, by the way, last week I happened to buy a French language copy of 1001 Nights, and I've been looking into its origins. Some of the stories that we in the West consider quintessential parts of the book, like Aladdin and the Magic Lamp, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, the 7 Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, were all independent stories, not actually included in the original Arabic versions, but they were added by Antoine Galland when translating them for a French audience. And then it was that French version that was subsequently translated into English. It's very cool to me that when learning French and slowly building my French library, I learn more and more about old classics every day, and even ones that I would never really have considered as being anything to do with being French. Until the book, I had no idea that the French translation was responsible for it becoming popular in Britain and America. That is really, really cool. So, bravo, Monsieur Galland. Back to Shantae. They originally started working on ideas for her character and her first original game back in 1997. Erin imagined using her belly dancing to create magic, and to use that to summon or charm animals. This was later evolved into her being actually able to transform into different animal forms with her magic, and each animal form had different abilities. And also the idea to dress her in different cute/sexy costumes to use different magic. They wanted her to have a non-magic attack too, similar in use to Aladdin's fast sword swipe in the Genesis Aladdin game. And thus, Shantae gained the ability to swish her long pointed ponytail and Simon Belmont whip her hair back and forth, whip her hair back and forth, she whips her hair back and forth, she whips her hair back and forth. Just whip it real good. They originally planned the game back around 1994 as a Super Nintendo game, but it didn't get greenlit, unfortunately, and they continued to develop the idea. By 1997, they'd started to plan a potential 3D game using the character for PlayStation or PC, but again, it never really got the chance to make it out of a very early prototype, and Way Forward were extremely busy making multiple licensed games per year. But after the trifecta of the 2 Sabrina games and the Wendy game all being very successful, very well-received platformers for the Game Boy Color, and given that connection between witchy Samantha from Bewitched and her network TV rival in I Dream of Jeannie, it seemed a natural fit to make a 4th game, a spiritual successor, but swap out the cute pixel art witch for a cute pixel art genie, and in 2002, Shantae would finally get her time to shine. Well, that was funny/sad/informative/stupid, wasn't it? Feel free to mentally redact to make that make sense with the clip that you just heard. I don't know what it was. I'm just recording a bumper. But if you enjoyed the clip, please give it a like. If you'd like to hear more, click subscribe, and you can find all the ways to listen to and support the full daily podcast at linktree/dailyswitch2. That's linktr.ee/daily switch 2. Let's go! Did I sound like I mean that? I do. I really do.